Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name
Yeah, I think there's some network issue on George's end. Let me just check with him. Well, this is funny because I was expecting the issue from Brandon's end, but there's some issue on George's end. So please give us a few seconds while we get started.
No, yeah, no problem. No problem. You'll wait.
Yeah, hi George. We kind of lost you even when we get started, so maybe you will need to start again. We are live.
Okay, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Brandon, can you hear me okay?
I hear you, George. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what happens when we do live streaming, right? We have technical difficulties, and we have the best man, I guess, to help us out with those things with your background. So I'm not sure how much people heard, and I got chopped off, but if everyone would indulge me, I am going to restart, and I apologize for the delay. But again, my name is George Kushner. I am the Chief Business Officer of Toyo. Today, I'm super excited. We have Mr. Brandon Friesen, and we have a lot to jump into. Brandon is broadcasting live from China, I understand. And Brandon has a heck of a background that I'm going to run through real quick, and then we'll dive into the topic at hand. But Brandon, welcome very much. Super excited to have you. And again, Brandon is an acclaimed American Grammy Award nominated and Multi-Juno Award winning music producer, audio engineer, mixer, and television producer as well. His current companies include record label Blue Cadillac Music, which he has partnered with Billy Ray Cyrus, Arbor Television, and C12 Records, which is distributed by EMI Music in Canada. In 2007, Brandon developed a TV production company called Arbor Television. It produced the acclaimed music comedy variety series Arbor Live, ran for 3 seasons, had Motley Crue, Love Vince Neil, Buckcherry, The Stray Cats, Velvet Revolver, Go Slash, Fishbone, Stain, Slayer, Mother, Joe Satriani, pardon me, Papa Roach, Comeback Kid, and numerous other internationally acclaimed bands. Brandon also founded Arbor Records in 1999, which is recognized as one of Canada's top 10 most influential independent record labels by Applaud magazine in 2004. As a producer, mixing engineer, and audio engineer, Brandon Friesen's career has spanned over 15 years. In 2006, he was honored for a second time as Engineer of the Year at the WCMA Awards, prevailing over a number of highly respected engineers such as Randy Staub, which he actually engineered one of my favorite bands of all time, Metallica and Nickelback.
Right.
And he also engineered and mixed the Power 97 session, which include acoustic performances by Nickelback, Sum 41, Everlast, Seether, Stained, Finger 11, 3 Days Grace, and many, many more. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you. I think I need to update that Wikipedia a little bit, but I appreciate the the bio.
There's even more? We could have spent the whole show just with your bio.
Oh no, 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 no. So yeah, I've transitioned more into management these days. That bio is probably about 10 years outdated. But yeah, so artist management and still running labels and publishing and selling catalogs and working in the crypto space and token space and so forth, and just helping build careers. And now my focus is more on exporting Asian artists to the world, such as the Who, the Mongolian metal band. We started with that, and now I'm here working with a group called Nine Treasures, who are an Inner Mongolian Chinese band and who are very famous here. We're doing a tour with Live Nation, and we're now about to export them around the world.
Well, look, you've had an incredible journey that I've been told it spans over 3 decades, and you have helped shape global music scene from producing chart topping artists to managing international acts. And we would love to learn more about how that journey began and it evolved, and what, if any, moments truly stand out as turning points for you.
Oh wow, that's really Started in the 90s, right out of high school. I'm a guitar player, and I wanted to make records. I was just under the, Mutt Lange, and who was producing, artists like AC/DC and Def Leppard. I would try to read up on these guys as much as I could because I was recording my own bands, and then I just wanted to learn the art of producing and recording. And at that time, the digital era was just beginning. I started in '92 with analog tape, and in '96 I got a thing called Session 8, which was made by a company called DigiDesign, and that was the very first version of Pro Tools. And then DigiDesign from Session 8 created Pro Tools. And right from the start, I just, there's always a competition between analog and digital fidelity. And for me, I just love the editability of digital. And of course, now fast forward 25 years, 30, almost 30 years now, electronic music is just a monster in the space. And music created with computers. It's funny, there's an old clip of Jim Morrison, back in 1969, and they asked him, what do you think the future of music is? And he says, I think people are going to be making music with machines.
Well,
and there you go. Right.
For those audience members that are a little bit too young and might not know that reference, Jim Morrison was just a little bit of a famous lead singer of a band, American rock band called The Doors, and one of my favorites of all time. So it is amazing how you have certain really geniuses in industries that just have the future vision of where things are going. And I think that transcends almost all industries, from tech to music to what have you. But for him to make that call, you're talking 60 years ago, that's pretty impressive.
Very impressive. Actually, Robbie Krieger is a client of mine, the guitar player, and he is on stage tonight at the Greek Theater in LA doing the 60th anniversary of the Doors. And he has
wow.
Derek from Sum 41 is joining him, and Perry from Perry Farrell is joining him. He's got the whole slew of people coming to support him.
So in this long, storied, historic, and incredibly accomplished career, was there any one moment or maybe a couple that really kind of stood out as turning points? I don't know, whether going from vinyl to tape or tape to MP3 or maybe now where we are today, but anything in that world that really...
Well, unfortunately, I owned a record company, a pretty large one, actually, that Arbor Records company that you had referenced. And it was awarded. It started in Canada, and then it became a global company with offices in England and America. And when torrents were a big thing, and record stores were going out of business left and right. Tower Records went out of business. HMV, CD Plus, these massive chains that you would see in every mall across across Europe, UK, America, Canada, they're all going out of business because people just weren't walking into these stores and buying CDs anymore. So I went through that era of transitioning from cassettes to CDs. Vinyl was always kind of there. It was always this, like, vinyl will never go away. Vinyl, by the way, has a resurgence. So vinyl is kind of like a piece of art you stick on the wall. It's a physical piece of art that you want to have. And ironically, I remember in the 90s, I had a monster record collection that I inherited from my stepfather. And that's probably what got me into music. He had every Led Zeppelin record, every Pink Floyd, everything that you can imagine was in this collection I had. And then when I was a young dude, I was moving around a lot, apartments and figuring out my career and traveling. And I threw it away. I threw that whole collection away. And I'd walk to record stores and I would be like, I was like, well, can I sell it? Can I get what? They didn't even want it. They're like, no, these things are worth $1 a piece. Well, now, 30 years later, there was $60 a piece, So vinyl will always be a collection item. But as far as like daily consumption, I mean, we all live on our devices, on our mobile devices. We all live on our phone. We all, and so you have to deliver content that way. And I think it's great. I think it allows everyone to be nomads if they want to be. If they want to travel, they can. I mean, I've been to maybe 70, 80 countries in the world. And I know everyone's the same in the sense that they're all glued to their phones while they're on the train or on a plane or on a bus or whatever. And they're missing the beauty of the world. Today we took a bus from Guangzhou to Shenzhen, and that drive is unbelievable. I'm just north of Hong Kong right now, but that drive was unbelievable along the coast and the amount of rivers and infrastructure. And I'm looking around at all the crew and the band. There's two touring acts that are on this tour on the bus. And I'm looking at all this beautiful scenery and these massive rivers and huge ships and beautiful mountains, and everybody's just stuck on their phones. But whatever, it is what it is. It's this generation.
Well, the good news for those guys is they don't have the exclusive on that. To your point, 99.9% of the people around the world just every day, I don't care how old you are, it's like universal. And unfortunately, I don't think things are changing. Maybe it gets worse, or who knows, but
I don't know. It's okay. It's all right.
It is what it is, right?
It is what it is.
I mean, at least we know where the eyeballs are.
Yeah. Back in the 70s, 80s, like my parents would sit in their car and listen to the radio, and that was their way of tuning out or being entertained, I guess, right?
100%. So let's kind of shift a little bit and start talking about the modernization of the world. And we're speaking about mobile phones and people's incessant connectivity to it. But what first drew you towards exploring music tokenization, and what excites you most about the space? And I'm curious if you remember, so I come from the finance world, worked on Wall Street a long, long time. And it's probably been at least 15, maybe 20, even more years ago. I don't know if you remember this, where David Bowie actually securitized via a bond the rights to his future work. So I'm curious with tokenization, again, your journey down this road and really what excites you about it.
Well, the reason why Bowie did that, like securitizing, his masters, was protection more than anything. And
IP.
And also for him to be able to sell that catalog, and there's also some tax benefits you would probably be aware of, being the educated finance man that you are. But you are right, and that is a model that a lot of legacy artists are now looking at doing. So Bowie invented the model. Him and his team created that model. But blockchain. The blockchain has really come a long way. Like there were some early cool artists that understood blockchain and were trying to implement it, but people just didn't know how to consume it at the time. And this was about 15 years ago, 10 years ago maybe. But now with tokens and like just crypto exchanges, there's been a lot of, you've probably heard of a lot of like crowdfunding campaigns where people would say, I want to make this album, or I want to create this painting, or I want to do this, and then their fans of their work could buy a percentage or send in money and get a piece of that copyright, a piece of that ownership, right? Whereas I think this tokenized model, and the one that Toyow is doing in particular, their model, I think it allows diversibility, because you still have to play in the markets. You still have to make those songs available to, on platforms. You still have to do that right now. You still have to make it available on Spotify and Apple and, all the NetEase here and Tencent and whatever, YouTube. But I think it allows, number one, there's more transparency and there's more credibility to paying, owners, not just creative owners, like the publishers and the songwriters and, and the artist royalties. And, but now I think that it just allows the community to be more involved. And that type of like taking care of your fans is important to every artist I work with at any level. Like whether they're a superstar like a Billy or Miley Cyrus, or if they're just some young hardcore band, or a band like Comeback Kid, just playing 800 cap rooms for around the world everywhere. It's important they take care of their fans. And and the way that everyone's always done that is like merch bundles, like soft merch, meaning t-shirts and hoodies and token keychains, whatever, and then obviously vinyl, CD, things they can sell at the merch table. This allows a global merch table, is what it really does. It's a way to really just allow all your fans to participate in what you're doing, financially as well.
It's kind of a simple model in the fact that without fans, artists aren't artists. They don't really, they need them to thrive and survive and become famous and do all the things they want. And I think that the really interesting thing about tokenization, what excites us at Toyow, is that, when you think about any type of business engagement, ultimately you want what's equitable or fair for both parties. Typically, that's very, very rare. But the notion that we really like about tokenization and blockchain technology is this D word, democratization. And so when we look at it, it's much more equitable and fair to the artist, but also for the fan that's getting a piece of that artist outside of just the swag, outside of just the merch. Maybe it's AMAs, maybe it's loyalty points, maybe it's, behind the scenes concert, depending on how many of their tokens they own. And so it's going to open up, and just for fractions of dollars, people are going to be able to participate, maybe rev share and things like that. So what it's opening up globally, and then the liquidity that it can provide the artists, and there's 8 billion people in the world. I don't know how many music companies there are and record labels there are, but I can almost promise you they're not 8 billion or anywhere near that number. And so it opens up this really massive, wide distribution audience and brings liquidity that up until now has been absolutely untapped. And again, this is just one asset class that we absolutely relish and love, outside of all the different asset classes on the planet. And so we're changing gears a little bit here. So when you think about the shift in the music industry, we spoke about this a little bit. The music industry went from physical albums, and correct me if my history is wrong. So we went from physical albums to probably tapes, and then I think went to CD, and then probably MP3.
Hold on. You missed 8-track. Do you remember 8-track?
Oh, 8-tracks. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So vinyl has always kind of been there. It started with wax cylinders back. Yeah. Edison had the first record company because he created the gramophone, and he had to have content available to record onto and play it back. So he had the very first record company, Edison. And of course, EMI, which has now been sold to Universal Sony, but EMI was then the next one. And, they were around for 110 years before they got sold off. But so wax cylinders, vinyl, 8-track, cassette tapes. Yeah, and then CD. Mm-hmm. Now you're in the digital world. And once you go into CDs, things are digitized. They're no longer waveforms, analog waveforms. They're now zeros and ones. They're now digital. So CDs, then people would rip them, create MP3s. Once that laptops and phones became, you had a little CD-ROM in your tower, your computer at home, and you could extract audio, you could extract video, you do what you want with it. And then the internet became faster, after dial-up was done. So really all of these evolutions happened because this industry, enabled this industry, and it just continued to feed off each other. So now that Wi-Fi is streaming and the internet is faster and modems are faster, you know, and they're just going to keep getting faster. I mean, with Starlink and everything else, that all the infrastructure that everybody's racing to build. Yeah, so MP3s. So, and of course, you know, WAV files or MPEG, you know, MPEG files. Those are like the higher, larger files that we use in the audio world. So when we upload stuff to DSPs, those are in a WAV file format. An MP3 is basically just a compressed version of that WAV file.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so when we look at the shift and moving on to blockchain, how do you see this impacting value as far as it flows back to the artists?
Well, like rewarding your fans, like loyalty program, like all of that stuff. There have been so many attempts. In fact, I even had for a short while created a software company called InCrowd, and it was meant to do that because a lot of artists or labels or celebrities, they rely on fan-driven social sites, right? And what they try to do to incentivize those fans is they give them stuff. They're like, give you early access to, or you can come have a free VIP to meet me when I'm in your town, or you can have a t-shirt. Well, that's all cool, but they're all giving away the same stuff. And it's all kind of like, to me, I wanted to create more and create a loyalty program with that company where it's almost like airline points, like air miles. You know what I mean? Where you the more you do, the more interaction you get, the more you actually, you know, are working to promote this artist or this music that you love, or this genre. Maybe you love all punk bands or all hardcore bands or whatever, pop artists, whatever. Like Taylor Swift actually has probably one of the best fan bases in the world. That's a good masterclass if you want to see how it's done. But yeah, so if she had a way, and I know she's working on it, and we should, you know, to reward her fans in a higher way, where they can get these loyalty programs, then use that as cash, use that to go and buy tickets or buy stuff or buy merch or discover other artists. You know,
that's right.
Every famous artist like Taylor Swift wants you to know about these other cool bands because they all help each other that way, right? So that is where tokenization is really going to take off, and the more it's available, the more accessible it becomes. Because right now, like even, you know, trading crypto coins, I mean, there's only X amount of exchanges, and there's only, you know, you have to be really savvy if you want to know what the ones that aren't the top, you know, like the Binance or the Coinbase or whatever the top 5 are that everyone knows. And I'll tell you, I got some friends that make a lot of money because they know how to buy those coins like on day one, you know, before they hit those exchanges. So I think accessibility is really the challenge ahead of us, is just making it available to everybody, you know.
And I think that's all coming. You know, we speak about this all the time. It's extraordinary how still very, very early on we are in this entire industry. I mean, blockchain's been around for decades. Bitcoin's now been around for 16 years, almost a little bit over that in January of next year. But yet, when we start talking about blockchain and the, you know, the known commodity that it is around the world, very few people. I think that every day it's growing, and certainly tokenization, we're at literally just the beginning of the dawning. I mean, we're talking about pioneer stage for what we're all building here. And again, going back to the equanimity of not just what it does to the artist, but the fan, there's never been anything like this ever. And so it's just going to change so many things in so many capacities. So if an artist actually came to you tomorrow, say they're watching this and they're coming to you and they say, look, they're questioning whether to tokenize their next release, what's the first thing you would tell them to consider?
Well, I can't see any harm in it. I mean, the problem is so for the established artists, or excuse me, or the artists that are signed to record companies, those, again, you know, like in the era of early 2000s when Napster was showing up and all the labels knew how to do was sue them. And then Steve Jobs came out with the iPod, right? And you know that, and then Apple Music became the first platform where you could actually legally buy music. But it was a challenge for him because these record companies, they move very slow. It's lumbering how slow they move when it comes to, you know, new technology. They all say they want it. They all say they want to embrace it, but these contracts don't always allow it. So we have to modernize these contracts. We have to modernize the thinking. And there's a lot of smart new record companies that are inside of big companies like Universal and Sony and Warner and BMG and etc. That get it, and they're going to force it through. So really, like for a young new artist, it's cool, but you need a fan base already to it's a good way to help develop your fan base as well, and having that extra those extra tools in your toolbox. But I think we just need to start educating record companies a little more on this, and get them to come along as well. Because once you do that, it's now you've got a lot of machines pushing in the right direction.
That's right. We talk about a couple things here that I think are going to really drive broad and mass adoption. And one thing is certainly the regulatory clarity. Everybody wants to make sure that any token they're issuing or token they're participating in is legally okay in whatever jurisdiction they reside in. The U.S., thank goodness, is almost there. We passed something called the Genius Bill back a couple months ago, which really regulates stablecoins. We're halfway through something called the Clarity.
Let me ask you some questions on this, because you're very knowledgeable in this, and I want to learn some things on this podcast. So what countries do you see as the ones the most challenged? Like, I know here in China, I have friends that do trading, right, crypto trading, but it's not easy for them, and there only a couple exchanges are available to them here. Which countries do you see are the ones that are the holdouts, the ones that might take the longest to get there?
Well, I don't know that I would couch it that way. I would tell you that depending on the day, we have seen Xi and the administration sometimes be kind of pro or okay with crypto and then anti-crypto. I think I might be able to say the same thing for Modi in India. And again, those two countries alone represent over 1/4 of the world with their population. And so I think that what I honestly think is, and gosh, I don't want to sound too Americanized and too U.S. centric here, but I think that once the U.S. provides this regulatory clarity, which again should be either maybe by the end of this year or certainly Q1 of 2026, I think that's going to be a catalyst for the rest of the world and the holdouts, if you will. I mean, Europe has MiCA, and so they're implementing legislation and laws that make it much more clear. You have the UAE that's doing the same thing. So I think for these mega massive countries, other parts of Asia, they're okay with it. Korea, Singapore can be very strict, but also has rules of engagement.
I was in the airport in Kuala Lumpur in 2017, and you could buy a Subway sandwich with Litecoin.
Yeah, there we go.
You know what I mean? Like they were way ahead, in Malaysia, but that was a very isolated moment. But when I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, Litecoin and Bitcoin, they're transacting, and of course now you can buy Teslas with Bitcoin and so on.
And I think that again, because of the economic disparity, or one country doesn't want to see economic advantage over the other, I think that again, once we get this hashed out here, which is fairly imminent, that a lot of these other countries will probably upload it into their top agendas. I mean, I think that the reality is, when you look in these parts of the world that I just discussed, China and India, and even though this is a global phenomenon, we have 1 in 20 around the world. So that's 1 in 5. That's either unbanked or underbanked. And in those countries, especially, it's the statistics are even more than that. But yet everybody on planet Earth, to your point, is walking around with one of these things. And so if you have one of these things, you now can become your bank. And so I think it's going to be in the best interest of China and India.
Like China, you can't even use a credit card here anymore. It's all with your phone. It's all WePay, Alipay. It's all in those. Once you're in those apps, they are so sophisticated. There's so much you can do inside those. In fact, Alipay, you can add third-party apps. That would be a great platform to tokenize.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the business and management and tech. And you've managed global acts like The Who, and that's not Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend of the WHO, but the HU, which I believe you were saying when we had a quick pregame prior to their Mongolian band. But what challenges do you see with bridging traditional management models with the tokenization framework?
I think it's a benefit, man. I really do, because on the management side, how we make money is we take a commission of the artist's earnings. So it's in our best interest to make our artists rich and sustainably rich. So that means not putting them in, necessarily deals that have big checks applied to them, but short-term goals. Longer-term goals are always the option. So that means like revenue streams for us are the same as the artist. So that means merch money, that means touring, ticketing, right? Ticket sales, all of it, record royalties, publishing, songwriting royalties, et cetera, et cetera. So the goal for a manager is to make sure the artist has an image, has a fan, so a fan base can attach to it and can grow. So they have to kind of know who they are, where they sit. And I don't mean pigeonhole yourself in a small box, but I mean understand who your fan is, and that's where tokenization really will tell you a lot of that. A lot of the analytics will
100%.
show you that. And there are tools we use that the whole entire industry uses. And if I can let out a secret here, there's a website called Chartmetrics, and it's an expensive platform. You got to pay $120, about 120 a month to be on it. But every A&R person, every radio programmer, every promoter, who's booking festivals or booking bands are on this site. And what that site does, every artist, it shows their Instagram analytics. It shows everything, Facebook, all of it, YouTube, Spotify. It shows and it breaks it down. It really it's every by city, by age, by all of it. So it's really a great analytical tool. We use that tool so we can say, okay, I don't want to. I can give you an example, but I don't want to give it out right now because we haven't put it on sale yet. There's an artist that's coming back that I'm a part of after 20 years, and we went on their Chartmetrics to see where are their fans still after 20 years, and we identified Washington D.C. and Philadelphia and New York and New Jersey, and we had real data based off of that website, and that's not the only one. There are other ones, so I'm not here to endorse that website, but that is, I'm just giving you an idea like that. Those analytics are used every day by my industry and the entire entertainment industry and the movie industry as well. So tokenization will actually give artists and creators more insight like that, whereas that's kind of exclusive to industry people and labels and management firms and booking agency firms and so on. So I see it as a great tool, and it's a great way for us to reward fans and to mobilize and organize fans as well.
Very, very cool stuff. And I think, again, with blockchain technology, they'll also be able to see everything on chain in live time, who holds what, who's moving stuff, who's shifting. And I think all those analytics will be right there at their fingertips as well.
It's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how that does affect, because this is art, right? And art is very passion driven. So as that happens, it's going to be interesting to see how that correlates with the art side of it. You know what I mean? Because it's almost like owning a Picasso painting, but that's exclusive to one guy with a bunch of money or one museum with a huge budget, right? Now it's a community. Now it's like the whole city can own it. The whole village can own it.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. What role do labels and publishers play in this new ecosystem?
Say that one more time.
What role do labels and publishers play in this new ecosystem?
Publishers are going to love it, because publishers always struggle to get paid. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, there's systems in place where they do, but they're constantly, like, the way a publisher represents a songwriter, and they generally own a small piece or take a small percentage to go and collect all of the songwriting royalties that are due. And to give you an example, when a song is streamed on Spotify, it's a 0.0001 penny, whatever, that goes to the master rights holder. The master rights is generally the record company. And back in the day with CDs, vinyl, whatever, you would be paying a mechanical royalty to the songwriters. The songwriters included the publishers. So on every $1 download, for example, back in the day when people would buy a $1 song on Apple or 99-cent song on Apple, 8 cents out of that $1 would go to the songwriters and their respective publishers, or they're self-published, right? So publishers will like the I guess the technicality of it, and just the the accountability of it. So that will help publishers. That'll lessen their expenses too, their operating capital, their operating expenses, you know. So it's good for that. Yeah, as far as labels, I mean, again, their model is market, own the masters, and you know, and labels, they don't always own 100%. Like those old deals where you hear about them owning all of the royalties, all of the income. That's not even really legal anymore. So that doesn't happen very often. Well, in some countries, there's still work for hire, which obviously, you know, Bollywood is famous for that. But it's becoming less and less, you know, with the organization of the streaming services, the DSPs. So I see it as a really good tool. It will actually reduce administration costs for these entities.
We speak about a lot of different industries where people that are in operations or administrative roles, I think blockchain is it's certainly going to enhance, unfortunately, might potentially replace a lot of these roles just because of the sheer efficiency in record keeping and tracking and things of that nature. It's all out there on this immutable chain, which again is game changing. So how do you see platforms like ours here at Toyo bridging the gap between creators and investors?
I think we need to have as many creators as possible, as much as the platform can sustain at the moment. That is, and once it becomes the hub in a norm, the next challenge will be staying ahead of the curve, because everyone's going to want to copy your model. So really, that's what it is. You know, let's get it in front of. And a lot of artists, like here's a misconception. A lot of people see blockchain or tokenization as a workaround for artists to be completely DIY, do it yourself. And that is never I don't support that. I think DIY is great if you want to be DIY, but I've seen the difference when you actually have a big company and a big machine and a bunch of really smart marketing people and you know, branding people at these record companies on your team. It changes the game. So we have to make it friendly to these record companies and these music companies, publishing companies, to be a part of this. You know, it can't just be, we don't need you because we have this. It has to always be conclusive, in my opinion.
And I think when you look at, again, the capital position, you know, starting a record label, I have to presume, is not a cheap endeavor. It is an extraordinarily capital intensive, and to maintain that and to market and to do everything to get these artists found and up and running and known, and to have now individual, you know, it's institutional type of money we're talking about, tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. But with blockchain, and going back to what you were discussing earlier, we now have, you know, potential pool of 8 billion people that can chip in and invest in certain artist labels and participation of either touring or shows or albums or individual records of all these different things. And so, not to eliminate the companies, but it certainly can help them with funding in certain projects when they want. And yet, from the investor standpoint, it's not just, you know, a rev share. You have a meet and greet. You might have, you know, personalized signed merchandise from some of these artists.
George, you just nailed it. Meet and greets and VIP experiences are key to every act, every artist, and it's a whole nother tier. And if there's a way where we can incentivize fans to go and bring in new fans, and maybe give them those experiences because they're you know, loyalty programs, you know, allowed them that is a really great. These are great tools. These are things this industry needs that will create more harmony and create more. I just see it as such a progressive tool. It really is. And honestly, like these days, record companies aren't looking for unknown artists that have no socials. They're not trying to find some prodigy kid who's playing acoustic guitar on the corner, you know, on the street corner. Those days are over. They are looking for artists that already have momentum and they're going on their own and they're building it on their own. So tokenization allows them to actually speed that process up. And then the big companies with the capital, the $100 million infrastructures, 100 million, Universal, what is it, $2 billion, then they will get involved. And what a lot of these big companies are doing, the presidents of these companies are not stupid. They all started where we started, you know, where all the kids started. And looking corporate isn't cool. So what they do, and not in the music business. So it's like if you have a LinkedIn page and you're in the music business, it's not good. It's not cool. That's how they look at things. That's perception from the
Yeah.
music industry. They always look at LinkedIn like that's for the business guys, and that's the last thing we want to be. Is
The suits. That's for the suits.
Yeah, that's for the suits. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like refusing. I never want to wear a tie. It's like that kind of whole kind of mindset. But what was my point? So anyway, so tokenization will allow these artists to actually build this momentum, and then these major labels can come and get involved. And what the majors are doing is they're propping up little indie labels owned by artists. So Stevie Aoki, for example, had he just sold his label for tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. It started with nothing. He had no money when he started it. It started because he wanted to release his own records, and then he signed some of his buddies, and they made these records, and it didn't cost him a lot to do it, and then a big company came along and then administrated it for him and created marketing services for him and all that other stuff. So now with tokenization, you actually have an accounting of all of everything where you are and where it's at. And then the big companies can come in and they can add more capital and push it harder, as they already are. But now now you have visibility on your asset at all times in real time.
It's truly amazing how in real time, in live time, we're seeing all these changes. And I think that, you mentioned a word a little while ago, which is key and pivotal and vital. And really, this is for everyone in the Web3 industry. And it's all of our parts collectively for education. And I think that's, people have been, I don't know if they've been sleeping on it because they just didn't take it seriously or waiting for regulatory clarity around the world or what have you. But again, I keep saying this genie is now out of the bottle. And I think that as an industry, the more people we can educate and get them up the curve and comfortable, then that's going to help expedite the really mass and broad adoption globally. And
Jordan,
so,
you nailed it. It's educating. It's educating the companies, the labels, the artists, everybody involved, the publishers, educating them so they don't fear it, and also getting out of this DIY mentality, because it has to be inclusive, right? So I think that's key.
so you mentioned, so we're going to change to global perspectives here. I think you said you've been to 42 countries. How many countries did you say?
Oh my God. Well, every country in Europe, every country in Asia, every country in North America, South America, Central America.
Okay, so a lot. Let's just
The
say
only
a lot.
continent I haven't been to is Antarctica. Oh, Africa. I've never been to Africa, and it's on my list.
Okay, all right. So since you have this worldly global perspective and experience across many continents, well, 6 out of the 7 continents, which is you haven't hit the Eskimos and polar bears yet, but that's on your to-do list. But what do
I
you
have that in
see?
Canada. I already know what that is in Canada.
Yeah, exactly. Do you see certain regions that are being more adaptive to crypto and tokenized projects than others, and picking that up? I know we touched on that just a little bit a few minutes ago, but is there anything else that's really kind of standing out there?
No, not. I mean, again, I need to be educated a little better in that space as well. I mean, I've seen the artists that are aware of it and using it are obviously more UK based, European, American. But I would say this, Australians too, artists who are aware of a patron model or who are aware of like fan based models. Whereas a lot of amazing artists based in India, their model is Bollywood. So it's already an organized industry that does things a certain way, and now that model is becoming a little tired, and artists are now looking for new ways. There's companies there's countries like Vietnam where it's not organized. So there's a bunch of producers who have collectives, and those collectives are a bunch of cool artists, rappers, singers, whatever, all under their little umbrella. And then these producers go and find deals for their whole entire umbrella. So that is ripe for the picking. That is an industry, that is a country where this can be turned on right now. Whereas in the areas where the model is a little more organized and has been sustained for a long time, such as America, such as India, this can be a really good alternative to that old way of doing things.
Yeah, again, I continue to say, we're on the dawning of all this. I think that every country, on the planet within the next 24 to 36 months is going to have, and again, that's a crystal ball guesstimate, but I think that they're going to have much clearer regulatory rules of engagement. And when that happens, again, many industries, many people around the world are going to be participating, especially when it comes to stable coins. I think stable coins, again,
Yeah.
that's going to be put into place and could fund a lot of these projects that we're even talking about. But
George,
people need to understand they're purchasing things that their governments are deemed are legal and that are okay to invest in and not to get in trouble with. So that's all coming. I mean, we've seen the dawning of money evolve since bartering began 6,000 years ago, and this is just the next evolutionary step in
I don't
that
think you can
process.
stop it. I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's no way you can stop it at this point.
Agreed.
It is so entrenched in society now, and there's trillions of dollars now that are already in play in the whole crypto space, and you're not going to stop it. So you have to embrace it. It's the same thing when Napster and MP3s really harmed the music industry. What happened? Lawsuit, and now the labels entire model is based on DSPs and streaming and downloads. The entire business is now based on that. So, they resisted it as long as they could, but the consumers always win.
That's right. That's 100% right. And speaking about this future with my little crystal ball prediction, so let's put on your crystal ball here. And I want you to look out 5 years. So that's a pretty long time from now. But what do you think a music release will look like? And will every track have a token component?
I think albums will have token components. I think people are getting sick of singles. I think they're tired on the singles model. I think the video game industry is something that everyone needs to be paying more attention to, because there's a lot of bands are breaking out of video games. So with the Who, there's a great music man named Steve Schnurr who was in the industry for a long time. He A&R'd like Metallica, Master of Puppets. He worked at Arista Records at that time. He has been the head of music for EA Games for 20 plus years, and he has created soundtracks for all their games. They have the sporting games, and then they have like the fantasy games and so forth. So I think music in games, in the artists. So he's almost like a music supervisor for a film. It's the same idea, same concept. So I think that all these platforms can be tokenized, and then the layers can be tokenized under them as well. So I think that everything will become blockchain. I think every music release, every movie, every game, and then the components inside will become blockchain. It kind of already is. It just isn't. It's just messy at the moment. It needs to be organized better.
That's one thing we talk about a lot. I think that one of the big deters outside of education is the user experience in Web3 in general is not the smoothest and easiest. I like to say it's still kind of chunky and clunky and cumbersome. The 3 C's, I guess. But over time, just like everything else in tech, it starts off very, maybe, again, not user friendly, but we adapt and adjust, and it becomes very, just like we did in with the dawning of the computer and the internet and all these things that weren't intuitive initially. But over time, you do it a few times and it becomes much easier to use, and people come to the industry and also try and make things a lot easier to use over time.
You have to remember there's big companies like Live Nation that own Ticketmaster. And and they're constantly trying to integrate. So they have merch, they own merch companies, they own, it's a public traded company, Live Nation. So they're not just promoters, they're also real estate owners. They own venues, they manage venues. They would love this, to integrate it more. So when a new release comes out by an artist, whether it's a single or an album, obviously if you look in Spotify right now, there's events, and in the events there's tickets, so you can see where they're touring. If we can tokenize all of that easier and streamline all that easier, there you go. Think about,
and I was having this discussion with someone fairly recently, and Live Nation Ticketmaster came up, and oftentimes today we're still using our mobile phone with the ticket or whatever, and I guess people still have paper tickets, and you think about counterfeit tickets. Well, that is all going to be an NFT, a non-fungible token, where my seat is my seat. I'm in row 3, seat 3, and you're in row 12, seat whatever it is. And that's going to be on an NFT. It's immutable. It can't be tampered with. I mean, look, ultimately the bad guys can try and figure things out, but the reality is all of that stuff is going to be
Well, George,
tokenized.
there's a bigger thing at play. Whereas so ticketing companies like Ticketmaster, they like the digital ticket. They like the QR code, and that QR code, it doesn't remain the same. It's fluid, so it's changing. So when you go to Coachella and you have your QR code ticket, you can't just take a screenshot of it. I can't text that to you and then you use my ticket to get in. It's changing, constantly changing, right?
Nice.
So, and they've had that technology for a minute, but what's happening is companies will go in and buy 100 or 500 tickets for a show, and then upcharge and upsell them and sell them for higher money, for more money. It's basically what we call bootlegging. It's ticket bootlegging.
I was going to say scalping, but okay.
Or scalping. Yeah, that's actually the term. You're right. That's the ticket term. That people don't like that. The artists don't like that. The ticketing companies don't like that because they don't want to rip off the fans. And that money is just going to some greedy third party that's kind of found a gray area, and it's shady. And what that does is it just, so that fan has now paid $500 for a $50 ticket because they're a super fan. If they would have just got the ticket without all that greedy upcharge in there, then that other $450 would go to buying merch or buying whatever, buying beer at or whatever, other things. Yeah. So we don't like that. We don't like gouging like that. We don't like these third party upcharge companies, and it's become an industry. There's famous websites, and I don't want to give them any credit, but there's famous websites where you go to buy these tickets, and these tickets aren't guys like you and I who bought 2 tickets and then we found out we couldn't make it, so we put it up for sale. These are organized companies that are block buying, the best seats. So when I was a fan, when I was a young kid and I wanted to buy tickets for Metallica's arena show or Motley Crue or whatever, man, if I could get in the first 20 rows, that would be like the greatest moment. I'd sit there and wait. Back then, we'd wait in line at a physical ticketing company overnight to buy the best seats to get them early. Nowadays, all the best seats are gone before you even have an opportunity to buy the first one. So
you better have the fastest computer on the block, or you're out of luck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's just not. It's like inside trading. It's just not good for the business.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. So we're kind of getting close to the end here. A couple more questions. In your view, what needs to happen before tokenization in music becomes mainstream and wide adopted?
Again, it's just everyone has to embrace it. We need the support of the ticketing companies and the promoters and the agents and everyone, the labels, the artists, everybody. Yeah, but you have to start small. It's like Toyow is ahead of the game, so let's go get some artists and let's go get some small record companies or whatever, or maybe one big one, and let's start implementing. And once that happens, everyone's going to want to jump on this ship.
That's right. It's a bit like dominoes. When you have one or two start to fall, most industries are very incestuous. We all kind of know what's going on and who the players are and things like that. And I'm sure the music industry is no different than all other industries. And I think once you have maybe one, it doesn't have to be one of the the bigger firms per se, but certainly if one of the bigger firms, everybody else is going to immediately pick up their blockchain acumen, their Web3 acumen, and start flooding into the space. And I think that's very true across many, many industries around the world, not just relegated to the music industry, where we have all these people, whether it's logistics, healthcare, medicine, personal record keeping, all these things that we know are going to be moving on to blockchain over time. I think you have one or two industry participants that adopt it, and then boom, the rest start falling. BlackRock, I used to work there. When I was there, like you couldn't even mention Bitcoin and crypto, and now they're trying to lead the charge, and you're starting to see other asset managers and banks globally around the world that are starting to embrace it.
So much copyright catalog. They are one of the big purchasers of copyright catalog because they see this happening. They see this coming.
Very exciting. All right, we were down to the last question here, and that is, if you were to tokenize a classic track from your career, which one would you pick and why?
I don't know if I'd pick one from my career. Okay. But I sure wish that like Stairway to Heaven was tokenized. I sure wish I had a piece of that.
Can I give you my, I would love to be able to tokenize and have the sole rights to Dark Side of the Moon. If I could just do that.
Yes, I'm with you. The whole Pink Floyd catalog, all of it.
If I could just do that, if yeah, Roger and David Gilmore would be willing to do that, call Toyo up, and we would love to help you with that. I think this is, again, like I said, I think what, you know, all of this stuff brings such a much more equitable component to both the artists as well as their fans, the investors, whatever you want to call them. And I think that there's so many men and women around the world that want to be a part of that, other than just going to the show or buying the T-shirt or mug or what have you. And to be a part of that and having the recognition from the artist, okay, depending on, you know, you might have to hit a threshold of how many of their tokens or coins you hold and have. But I think that is going to change so many people, and you're going to see this continue to proliferate and grow. And again, I think 2026 is going to be a massive year for all of the kind of Web3 digital asset space. Tokenization is on the precipice of absolutely exploding. We see things growing every single day. New projects are getting added to the list of real world asset tokenization. And we are thrilled to be a part of this. We're thrilled to partner with you and people like you and do everything we can to help kind of spread the word, spread the gospel, if you will. Brandon, this was absolutely a phenomenal conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed every single minute of it. And I know it's late for you in China tonight. And thank you so much for participating. And I don't know if you have any last parting words for the listeners, but thank you.
No, I think I'm just excited, man. Let's rally behind this and let's make it happen.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brandon Friesen, this was fantastic. And thank you so much for your time tonight.
Cheers. Thank you.
Likewise.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.